When the alarm clock rang this morning, with a huge excitement, I got myself going, ready for a brand new day, willing to conquer even the Milky Way. Here I am, ready for day 2. I don't even mind the outside -4. Oh, and last night, should we talk something about it? Right? No? Well. While everybody was jamming at the steam room with our legendary band screaming for some more, the researchers hacked 203 posts on padded wall, condensing the first real assets into something whole. Music seems to connect us all, the dances even more. So today, let's open the day for some more. I'm asking now, are you ready for it all? The whole Europe is watching you online at the moment. They're sleeping. Yeah, it depends which part of the world are you, but I'm asking, are you ready for it all? Yes, good morning, everybody, and welcome for day 2. Today, with a focus digging deeper and taking the conversations and themes from yesterday into today, and really look again what matters and what to do about it all to shape the future. So maybe just a few things about the day. We're gonna be here the whole day until 5 o'clock. Most of the time will be organized in self-organized groups as part of Future Festival, and Future Festival is a way to have conversations that are really important to happen at this conference. And we're going to start with our morning, with a little morning chat. We have 2 guests coming shortly on the stage just to get ourselves going and inspire us for the day. We're going to hear, of course, what actually was there on 203 padded walls, and researchers really have done the first work. So introducing as well what has been the harvest of yesterday's conversation. And then we open for the Future Festival. Then for social media as well, we have a question of the day. Our team somewhere is already starting. So for the outside world as well, if you could have one important conversation to influence the future of young people in Europe, what would it be? So if you are somewhere just waking up and drinking your morning coffee, then what is this conversation you would like to have? And we are also this morning live. Hashtag use conference speak up. Then practically, if at some point you feel a little bit chilly and you want to cuddle up, then there are a few blankets also downstairs in the info desk, so feel free to go, and then when you don't need them anymore, bring them back as well. And as a practical announcement, sometime during the day, there will be 2 let's say posters out there in the coffee corners. And this will be about inviting to propose questions. Today in the evening, we will be having a visit by our President of Estonia coming and joining us for that dinner. And we thought that it would be really nice to spark up this evening conversation with her with some of the questions from you. So feel free to go to the poster and actually write what is this one question you would like to ask from her. And tomorrow morning, we're going to have the Commissioner Tibor Navracsics coming over. So if you could have one question for him, then what would it be about? And we'll make posters on the corridor. So feel free again to go and write as well. So these are the kind of practical. Everything else seems fine. I heard nothing has been. There's no like lost and found things. No, everybody seems. Yeah. Do you have your like? Friends over? Yes, they are still here? Yeah, great. So, and just to get ourselves going, then I would invite for a really short morning conversation. You should say hi to somebody next table. And you have 2 minutes just to share how are you this morning. So grab somebody from neighboring table, say hi if you don't know who is that person, and for 2 minutes, how are you this morning? Huh? No? Ooh, yes, yes, yes. We are on, we are online. So give a thanks to your conversation partner, and for sure, I know that for the morning part, you will have also some more questions coming up. So find a seat. Yes. Great. So to get ourselves grounded on this day and land and see what else is happening in Estonia, I know that David is anxious to bring our 2 guests here on the stage. So this is just for us to be present, get ready, and as we also have this something about future, although I think now is also very important to shape the future, but a little joyride with our guest speakers, just to inspire maybe us and spark our day. So, ready?
Yes. Let's have a morning coffee. Have you had your morning coffee yet? No, yeah, so there will be a coffee break later, so you can catch up on that. I'll just put it here. So in a minute, I'll invite two Estonian guests to the stage. And today will be about you working on important topics and digging deeper into important conversations. But before we start doing that, we want to give you some glimpses of inspiration to bring to these conversations. And maybe like open your minds a bit. So you have a momentum today to have the really important conversations. But what are the really important conversations? Yesterday, curiosity was mentioned. And we want to spark your curiosity with an Estonian inspiration. We want to bring two people together across generations. One of the guests is just 11 years old and is here with his mother. And in Estonia, actually, the age of youth is defined from age 7 until age 26. So he is indeed a young person. He is in the target group of youth, at least in Estonia, and soon he will be also defined as a young person in all of the European Union. So how do we actually have conversations that can improve the life for young people in your countries, but also young people in Estonia and young people like Gustav for tomorrow and for his future? And we want to take you on a small time travel. So let's fly a bit out in the future and see what we can find there. So I'm really happy to invite the two of you on stage. First, Gustav Paul Tamkivi. You are 11 years old. Give him a big hand. And have a seat in the couch. And also you, his mother, Ede Schank Tamkivi. Join us.
Thank you.
Maybe you actually want to come a bit closer, both of you, so join me over here. So, Gustav, welcome.
Thanks.
I know you have a YouTube channel, and you do a YouTube channel to teach other kids math.
Yeah. I made the YouTube channel because I just wanted to make videos. And originally, I just wanted to record myself playing video games and show it to my friends and stuff. But my dad suggested I should do math videos because there aren't enough of those. So I thought that was actually a really good idea because a lot of kids in my class were struggling with math. And it would be cool to show them, and I thought they would like it. So I started making math videos.
What's the name of your channel?
Gus channel.
Gus channel.
Yeah.
And maybe we should have a look at the videos just for you to get an idea of what is this YouTube channel. So we just have 2 minutes of one of your videos. So if we could get that on the screens.
Hello everybody, welcome to the 14th episode of Gus Math. Today we will be discussing Fibonacci numbers. I'm sorry I've been inactive for so long, it's just because it's been summer vacation and I'm just relaxing here in Saimaa. So, what are Fibonacci numbers? Some of you might wonder who Fibonacci is. Well, he was an Italian mathematician from Pisa, and he lived during the late 1100s and died during the early 1200s. He was also known as Leonardo of Pisa, and that might sound a bit like Leonardo da Vinci, but he actually lived 300 years before Leonardo da Vinci. I'm using an old blackboard to show you how the Fibonacci numbers work. So, as you can see, it looks a little bit like a spiral. So from here, around, and up there. So this is how it works. Beginning, there's 1 and 1 here. 1 plus 1 equals 2, which goes here. And then this is how Fibonacci works. So you get rid of the 1 here, so this doesn't count anymore. Then you add 1 plus 2, then 3 here, and then you get rid of this 1. Then you add 2 plus 3, 5. Then you get rid of the 2. Then 3 plus 5, 8. Get rid of the 3. And that's how you continue. So 5 plus 8, 13. Get rid of the 5. 8 plus 13, 21. Get rid of the 8. 13 plus 21, 34. That's how you continue.
So just, yay. So if you want to have math explained in a quite simple way, you can just go to Gustav's channel and have a look. How did you learn to do this?
Most of my video ideas come from math class, or I just try to simplify what the teacher says because I don't really understand. And also the reason the video was maybe kind of boring and kind of bad was it was made a year ago and it's mostly directed at like 5 to 8-year-olds, so small children.
So it goes a bit slow so they can follow.
Yeah.
I think you did really well.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yay! And Ede, I haven't said what you do, and maybe you can say a bit about it, but I'll just briefly introduce you. You're the CEO of an Estonian non-profit that's called SD 2.0. Is that?
Yeah, SD 2.0 or
SD 2.0.
Estonia 2.0.
Yes.
Meaning the next generation of Estonians.
And what do you aim to do there?
So we're aiming to get more youth interested in technology, so they would pick their future in technology. So anything to do with tech that's surrounding us anywhere. So obviously Estonia is known for its tech savviness, and for kids like Gustav, technology has been surrounding them since they were born. But we just need to empower them with new tools and make them understand that technology is inevitable, and in order to be successful in the world, we just need to know how things work and maybe start something new.
Let's unfold that a bit later. But I also want to start involving you, and we asked the two of you to prepare a question each for you. Like knowing that you are at this conference for 3 days, what would be a relevant question to ask? And Gustav, I'll just put your question on the slide, and maybe you can say what the question is, and also why you chose that question.
My question is, what do you guys think that we should teach kids and focus on kids to do for the future? And I'm asking this because what you guys teach kids today is what they're going to be doing in the future. So I just want to know like what you think is important for us.
And then I know you try to, like, can you be more specific? And then you really wanted it as an open question, right?
Yeah, I wanted to make it more general because a conversation usually starts with something like a really general question and it just evolves into more specific matters.
So, a link for later. Thanks. So now I'll give the word to you. So just go together 2 and 2 and have a small conversation on Gustav's questions. And then afterwards we'll hear a few of them and then we turn up here. What do you think is important to do for the youth of the future? Okay, thank you. And now Thea and Perrette are on the floor with microphones. And if a few of you just want to give a short answer to Gustav's question, it might be hard to unfold it fully, but just a glimpse of what your conversation was about. And when you go, please rise up so we can see you.
So, hi, we are Martin from Germany, and
I'm Alexandra from Hungary.
And we spoke about education because we saw that this is important for Gustav, what to be taught to children in the future. And also German youth would wish to have more practical education in some cases, because after 12 to 13 years school, young people do not know how to pay their taxes or properly, how to have contract with the landowner, how to with the landlord, with their employer. These are really basic stuff they don't have at school. And also the civic education.
Yeah, the civic education is really important. Also in Hungary, they don't really know how to vote and how the voting system works. So it would be really nice to, if for youth participation, in order for that to work and be active, to know how the system works. So.
More practical education. Thank you. Perrette, do you have someone on your side of the space?
I might know this. Right. Yes. Yes.
There's a hand there.
No, not yet. You're second, but I had a voice from here. So also stand up, so it's easier to hear.
We're paired. It's a pair. Go on. Stand up. Stand up, Sophia. Okay, so I'm Robert from the European Confederation of Youth Clubs, and
I am Sophia, and I'm here for the Scouts.
So what we discussed was the idea of if we that's not loud enough, is it? Okay. So the idea of teaching young people, or in fact giving them the tools to recognize narratives, to deconstruct narratives and create counter narratives. So rather than teaching someone, you're teaching someone to teach themselves in a balanced and fair way. And that's kind of built on from an example in Norway, where in secondary school they do teach this already. And I think that's, if your question is what should we teach people, then I think fundamentally, if you teach people to critically analyze information, that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, and like they said earlier, different forms of education and learning need to be, oh my God, I'm losing the words again. They need to be recognized. Yeah.
Working with narratives and recognizing different kinds of education. Thank you. There's a hand down there.
Of course. Good morning, everybody. Hello, I'm Lucas. Nice to meet you. And we were talking about that we don't know which challenges are there in the future, so we should focus on the ability to adapt whatever is coming there, the ability to learn and to be empowered for this lifelong learning process which awaits. And we, at the same time, cannot really teach what to do, but we can teach values. And then we got stuck in the discussion, what are actually values? So, yeah.
Adaptability and values. Thank you. Let's take the last one over here.
Thank you. I'm Ivo from the Estonian National Youth Council, and what we were thinking about is that the technological breakthroughs are so fast that if you check out around the places we live, there's self-checkout cashiers and things like that. So what's really important that young people sort of understand that the jobs that they are at the moment available, they might not be available in already maybe in 15, 20 years because it's completely robotized and AI is taking over. But there was an idea, yeah.
Well, what we see with the youngsters that we talk to, I'm Sophie from the Netherlands, is that children and youngsters want to learn in school about life skills, like how do I take care of myself, how do I apply for a job, how do I find a house, insurance. So I wish for when I was in school that I had learned more about these life skills, to how to live a good life.
Thanks a lot. And Gustav, I know also that education is dear to you. How was it hearing this?
Well, I agree with most of your opinions. What you said was really similar, so I can't really... but yeah, what I was thinking was... what I think we should be taught more is about programming, because, like you said, that a lot of things are going to be robotized soon, and we might not be able to control the robots. And another thing we should learn is psychology and reverse psychology. Basically, to be able to what's the word, like, to make someone do something. Yeah. So basically, to manipulate people, because that's going to be important in the future.
What makes that important?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of big changes with power and things like that. So if you want to make life good for yourself, you need to be good at persuading people. And robots, I guess, too. So yeah, and you also made a really good point about taking care of yourself, because a lot of kids don't know how to do that yet. I think you should start learning that as soon as you become a teenager, like just in case you become an exchange student or you start living by yourself or anything like that. So a lot of people aren't really used to taking care of themselves, and they have a lot of trouble with it. So yeah, I agree.
And actually leads me to the next question of is, how is it being 11 years old for you?
Well, I remember when I was smaller, kids my age didn't have that much independence. They were picked up by their parents every day after school, and they went to trainings, but that was about as much independence as they had. But now that I'm 11 years old, I can walk around the city by myself, I can use public transportation, I can go to my friend's house without being with my parents. Yeah, so I think as time goes on, adults are focusing more on their jobs and like things that matter, and the kids are sort of just roaming free. So.
What do you like to do?
I like to hang out with my friends and eat with them, and just hang out with them in general and play games, and so it's easier to do now that I'm older.
Ede, I'm curious, like, how was it for you to be 11 years old? It's a few years ago, so it was not 2017, but do you remember that time?
Yeah, it was actually 1991, so it was a very interesting time in Estonian history, because that was the time when we regained our independence. So having been born in 1980, obviously, the year of Moscow Olympics. So I grew up, or my most influential years were spent in the Soviet Union. And then obviously everything was changing very rapidly when I was 11. So besides being a teenager, so all of these things happening at the same time. So it was crazy time. And actually, now seems somewhat similar. So there's this sort of anxiety in the air. Although I'm much older now and I don't go through these personal struggles or looking at the youngsters these days, it's somewhat similar but yet very different. So when I was 11, obviously I was very keen to notice all these changes going on in our society, and obviously Estonia had the advantage of skipping many mistakes that other countries had made, and that's probably one of the reasons why we got on the fast track to develop all our state systems, starting from the scratch, and yeah, so it was a very interesting time, and I can't, like, looking back at this from this moment now, I can't even say if it's something that we all expected or has it turned out completely different. So I think it was just, everybody was just very, like, sort of going with the flow and didn't have sort of very long-term goals. So I think we're in a really good place now.
What do you see as the differences of being 11 years old at that time and then when you look at Gustav's life now in 2017?
I think, well, obviously we had many options at the time. So it actually sounds kind of somewhat of a paradox, but I think kids these days actually have less options, although you might want to say that they have more options because it's an open world. But for us, specifically at that time, in 1991, I think we had many more options. So the ones who were really going for the sort of, who were active enough and were going with the flow, they had actually many more options because everybody started from ground zero. So sky was the limit. So these days, actually, well, as Gustav already mentioned, the fact that nowadays you can go to, I don't know, hang out with your friends and go eat with your friends, and well, obviously we didn't have those options at the time, but that again gave us, I think, more time to contemplate on the things that we actually wanted to achieve. I think it's one of the concepts that if you want your kid to be really sort of come up with new ideas, you just have to let him or her just feel bored. And we had a lot of time to be bored, yes, because we didn't have those options that they have these days.
So you say there's a limited freedom now?
I think, well, yeah, it doesn't sort of make sense in a way. But then again, all this sort of virtual reality, so we know that these days kids don't go out that much anymore because they actually prefer to stay indoors. There was recently a very interesting study conducted on this, that so kids go out less, therefore they get less into trouble, sort of like physical harm, but they actually tend to harm themselves more because they tend to become depressed by spending this sort of time in this like living together alone, as we say, that the family is all under one roof, but actually everybody is in their own room using their own device, so they don't they interact through mediated.
How do you see that, Gustav? Do you feel that you have opportunities and can do what you want? Or?
Well, when there's like a free day for me, like I don't have trainings or my mom doesn't pick me up from school, I can just play games with my friends and just enjoy. Yeah.
At school?
No.
And how do you look in at the future? Because now we were like coming from the past. How do you see the future evolving?
Well, I think the future isn't really gonna change until like tens of years later.
It will not change until tens of years later.
Yeah, well, it will slowly change, but you won't really notice it until tens of years later and you look back on 2017. I think that is because right now we're in this sort of neutral spot where nothing is really going well, but nothing is actually like happening that's bad. An example of that is Donald Trump. He's super controversial, but he's in exactly like causing wars and whatever. So in a few, maybe 2030 even, we might look back and think, oh, how unevolved we were, or oh, how lucky we were to be in this peaceful state.
So how do you think the world looks in 2030?
In 2030, I always think there's two options for the future. That one is total nuclear war, and the second is we're extremely evolved and life is pretty much utopia. So.
And and then how do you see the future? You are working with involving young people in tech. Why is that so important for the future?
So what tech mostly brings us is freedom, and I have a really good example from one of the projects we did. Was we brought so we've done 3 projects with bringing like physical gadgets to schools, 3D printers, little bits which are little sort of electrical bits that you snap together with magnets to build electrical circuits. And then it was Bitcoin computers. So obviously, like, oh, what is it about? Like, do we want to get Estonian kids started in cryptocurrency? Well, that wasn't obviously, well, that was one of the side effects, but we wanted them to get into blockchain technology, which we see as the technology of the future. And some of the Estonian state operations already work on that. And that's, again, as the gentleman at the back pointed out, that technology is moving forward so fast that sometimes it's sort of we can't keep track with that, because for us, like we bought the computers, and by the time they arrived to Estonia from the US, you didn't actually need the physical machines anymore. You could just do it, like download the virtual machine or set up it. And but we still had the, as we started the online course, the tutor was based in Silicon Valley in the US, and the kids were spread out all over Estonia. And obviously, well, I suppose you're all acquainted with the situation in Estonia, that in Narva, on the border of Estonia, we have like 95% Russian speakers. And although in our schools we have the 60-40 rule that they have to speak Estonian, it's still somewhat, you know, there's no practical use in the city of Narva where everybody around you speaks Russian. So even if you speak or have to speak or study Estonian at school, you actually don't need it. So we have one guy from Narva, Maxim. So he's obviously very tech savvy, and everybody is struggling setting up these machines. And the guy in the US is like, oh, how is everybody doing? Should we, you know, first you enter this code and then you go to the next page, and everybody's like, oh no, let's take a step back. I'm still here. And then all of a sudden this Maxim from Narva is like, guys, I'm all set up here. Can we just start building the applications, please?
So they are on very different levels?
Yeah, well, everybody obviously is on a different level, but this is, to me, that was like a perfect example how technology helps you overcome these sort of borders that we have built in our heads. So as we all know that, like, well, the borders between countries, they can be physical things, but mostly they are borders in our heads. And again, Narva, a city that normally in Estonia would mean something on the margin, on every way, or in both on physical as well as sort of mental level, then with the help of just a simple piece of technology, this Maxim, he's actually like connected to all dots all over the world, and nothing is gonna stop him because he's just a bright guy. So this is a good example how we can, how this tech, or just handing this sort of fishing rod to this guy is just, he will just go on and fish as much as he himself, the limits he will set to himself.
And I know you also have a question for the audience that is connected to tech. So maybe we just fast forward and get that to this projector there.
Okay, yeah, because I wanted to get back to because Gustav already mentioned the nuclear war, so that sounds a bit gloomy. But I quite agree with him that we need to, and again, the projects that we've done with Estonian schools have shown me that although we, again, as this Bitcoin computer project showed us, that while you are handing out these new gadgets to schools, you also need to be aware of the dangers out there. And so obviously, every new technology entails some sort of, so there are good sides and bad sides. So again, technology doesn't have emotions. We need to be aware of that. So people sort of deploy these emotions upon these tools. And again, something that can be very useful in some field of life can be very dangerous in another, or used by bad people, let's say. But I wanted to
read out the question.
Stress the positive side, or make you think about the possible positive effects of the technologies that are already surrounding us and could be here in the next 10 or 20 years. So what would you see as helpful in your everyday life, or would considerably raise the standard of your everyday life?
So take a few minutes with the person next to you again, maybe look to the other side and talk about Ede's question. Okay, thank you very much. So what kind of technologies could and should radically improve our lives in the next 10 to 20 years, and in what way? Is there someone that would like to...
Yes, I have here somebody
Yay,
waving, wake up, not wake up, but stand up.
Okay, so we were kind of discussing, the three of us, about this Google translators that you put on your ears and they translate automatically. That would be something that, that would be something that would actually help people communicate easier, and even if it's a dialect or a language, to actually move away from the excuse, I don't speak English, but we actually understand each other and work and communicate better. But also we're talking about health, how important is that technology tackles health in 10 to 20 years, like we talked about printing hearts with 3D printers or skin and things that will really matter for people to have a long-term life. And there was always the argument of, I still want to have the part that I drive my car instead of being driven by my car. So, yeah.
Thank you. One here?
I'm Georgi from Georgia. We're thinking about the teleportation even and the time travel, but I'm thinking that all the European countries must adapt this from Estonia, and e-voting, this is the best one that we can adopt from your country. This is the main issue what our countries are facing now, and e-voting will change our life. It will help our electoral system and all of us.
Thank you. One more?
Doesn't work. Yes, somebody from here.
There's
in addition to Eva.
In the very corner, Peter.
Very corner.
Yes.
Yes. Who is here? Like, yes.
Stand up.
There's this short story by Isaac Asimov called The Last Question, and you spoke about artificial intelligence before. Maybe not in the next 20 years, but maybe 25, 30, if artificial intelligence gets better. There is a possibility we could use it to solve many more problems for us.
Thank you very much. So, how is it to hearing that?
Again, just as Gustav said earlier, I agree with everyone. And Estonian e-voting, we just had our local elections 2 weeks ago, and again, it literally took me 1 minute to vote, including sort of setting up the system. And I just don't understand these people who have the option and they choose to go to the voting booth, which actually takes. I understand that there's some sort of ceremony connected to that, and actually, if you're a first-time voter, and actually this time, for the first time, 16-year-olds could also vote on the local elections. That you might want to just go and see how it works, but if you actually have the option, why would you leave your house and just do it online? And it's very quick, and you get the results very fast instead of just counting the votes like by hand, which is again, like, I don't understand that those who say that it's safer, like the physical votes, it's by no means safer.
Did it spark anything for you, Gustav, hearing the suggestions?
Well, not really. I didn't understand some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't really know how voting works either, so maybe, yeah, that's another thing they should teach at schools.
Actually knowing how to vote?
Yeah.
Thanks. Eda, before we took your question, we skipped through a slide, and I'll just return to that. Is that all right?
Sure.
It's a picture, and you sent it to me. And how come?
So this is so obviously every teenager is always very happy when the mom brings out the picture of from your baby album. So obviously this is Gustav when he was 2-3 months old. So there's this tradition in every municipality in Estonia that you can get the birth certificate, which is actually one of the few documents that you still get on paper. And you get it from the mayor of the city. So as Gustav was born in Tallinn, then we got the birth certificate from the mayor of Tallinn at the time, who now happens to be the prime minister of Estonia. So this
that we had here just yesterday, Jüri Ratas.
Again, this is a good example how somebody mentioned the jobs of the future. So we don't know what the jobs. What kind of jobs we might need in 10 years, if the jobs you all have today will be existing in 10 years. So
So there's a lot of uncertainty.
Again, we just recently had a reform in Estonia where many of those local municipalities they just went extinct. So we now have much less of these little local governments, which again I think will make Estonia much more effective in the long run. So this is just a good example how you might never know
what life brings.
What life will bring.
And Gustav, you also said we don't know how the future will look, but there might be two options. And today, this group of people has to work on topics and themes that really matter to young people and will affect their future lives in Europe. And do you have any recommendation for them of what to focus on or how to have these conversations?
Well, I said before that psychology and programming are the main things that I think are important for the future. But I also think, some of you said that taking care of yourself and just learning how to live alone and be independent and stuff is very important.
So you recommend them to actually look into some of these topics. How can we ensure that the people learn about society and how to live life?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any recommendations for this group of delegates?
Well, I already heard a good recommendation that bigger countries of Europe should learn from Estonian example, because again, obviously the circumstances are different in every country, but because Estonia is so small, it's in a way it's a good testing ground for new things, and again, this is that's an old saying that you have to learn from preferably not from your own mistakes, but from other people's mistakes. So other countries can learn from our mistakes, as we have from other countries.
So there's an invitation also to share mistakes among the countries?
Obviously, and again, not to be, this is something, I just need to correct Gustav on that part when he was saying that when he was younger, he didn't have all these freedoms that he does now. The reason was that he actually went to school in the US, so we lived in California for 3 years. So again, that wasn't tied to his age necessarily, but the location.
Also the location.
Because rules are just different, so kids under the age of 12 cannot be left alone or can't walk from school to home alone.
There might also be different regulations in different countries that affect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is again, how the opportunities or the openness can influence our lives.
Thank you. And I actually want to close off just by asking you, Gustav, what are your hopes and dreams for your future life?
Well, I really want to learn how to code. I'm trying to learn how to do that. It's kind of confusing. It's not as simple as I thought. So it's going to take some time. But yeah, I mainly just want to learn how to code for the future.
Learning to code for the future. And with that, maybe you'll learn how to code or crack future themes for European citizens. So thank you very much for taking part and inspiring us for the conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to hand the stage to you, Thea.
Thank you. So yeah, this was quite inspiring, right? We really open up the place to see other things as well, and maybe to bring some more people who are not people like us, who are not maybe so connected directly with the youth work or youth policies, but who should maybe we should really take them into the account, because we are talking with young people, about young people, who are going to live the future with us as well. But first, well, before we go there, let's have a look. What have you done yesterday? Let's have some kind of mapping, an overview. What were the topics that you were discussing yesterday through the artwork, through Padlet, and through the discussions that you were having? So can I get some help in this? So I would like to ask David and Dan and Ondras to come here and join me. This is their work. As we said yesterday, we have researchers who are actually helping us to map all those things. So you can have a seat here. Yeah?
Great to see all of you still here.
Yeah, indeed. So how are you? How was your night? I heard it was quite long because of working, of course. Yeah?
Of course.
Of course.
Lots of hard work.
Yeah?
I mean, it was amazing. We did some hard work. You're going to see the fruits of it in a bit. And we also managed to also mingle with some of you and enjoy a bit. And I would also like to thank the organizers for the wonderful atmosphere, even after the working hours, which in our case was around 11 or something. Yeah.
Okay, so as said before, yesterday we collected all your inputs that you uploaded on Padlet. And we just wanted to show you this map of different topics that pop up. Because later on, maybe you want to work on those topics. Maybe you want to go deeper. Maybe you want to have some more conversations on those topics. So this is why we just wanted to provide you with this overview so we can see how to do the next steps. So then, please tell us what happened. What were the patterns?
Well, so what we spent our evening doing was bringing these patterns down, condensing all the things that had came into Padlet. And I think we came, you'll see them displayed over there, but we'll show them to you on the screen in a minute. And making links between the different comments that people have made. And I think we got it down to, was it 16 ideas in the end we had? So we're going to take you through those one by one to begin with. One of the themes that came out was the environment. People were talking things like creating environments that are free from addictive products, climate change, EU climate policy, nuclear power and green power, sustainable development goals, and a sustainable lifestyle that should be accessible and affordable for everyone. So, you know, very clear trend there of an issue that's really of concern to people.
Right, one of the issues which repeatedly also came up was health, and in particular the mental health. You can see that there's stuff like stress, anxiety, sleeping trouble. You obviously see that as one of the important topics. It's also connected to safe spaces and self-expression, expectations, and there was also some discussion also about legalization of some drugs. So these are also topics you might want to pick up after, when discussing further today.
And then migration issues. We probably should have highlighted, wherever possible, the bullet points on the slides. They're the actual things that have come directly from Padlet. Sometimes we have to trim them down a little bit to get them on the screen. So migration issues was a key part, particularly talking about the refugee crisis and some real calls that why isn't the EU doing more as it's the most developed region. But actually talking about going into the depth of the migrant crisis, there wasn't really much beyond that other than to say this is significant, but something we really need to do something about. So it wasn't that there were lots of different ways of talking about migration, just a need to recognise that's an important issue.
Right. There were also topics which might seem like large topics, but they were only just mentioned several times, so we just gave you an overview. It's connected to housing, transportation, civil society, and rurals. With connection to housing, obviously, you would be interested in seeing the European Union also contributing to the issue of housing for young people. The same goes for transportation, where you would really like to see some more affordable forms of transport, including even the cycle lanes. And with respect to the civil society, there's been a discussion on volunteering, which obviously is one of the topics which kind of prevail in the overall discourse, I would say. What was also interesting is that you have not forgotten that there is kind of this distinction between the center and the periphery, I might say. And you have mentioned several topics which are kind of connected to the rural policy. So you would really like us not to really forget when previously there's been mentioned this idea that some towns maybe are on a periphery. you would really like to see them developed as well as the centralized areas.
Peace and global security was another issue you were talking about. Under that, you were thinking about things like radicalization, ecological, social, and economical sustainability, how we show solidarity not only in the good times but in times of crisis. And there was a really interesting message that came through from a couple of places, was about how do young people feel confident we have a stable future as well. So it was not just about the issues themselves, but it was about how young people felt about the future.
Right, and then there was obviously this huge area of policy and politics. Generally, you can say that trust in politics is one of the issues you have mentioned, and it's obviously quite dear to you to be able, it's also connected to what Dan just mentioned, this kind of feeling of certainty, not feeling of that there's nothing really to go about. Then the feeling of empowerment, you obviously don't like to feel powerless, so you would like to see maybe some more, I would say, distinct relationship between what is happening even in here on the ground and what's actually going to happen also on the top floors, so to speak. There was this wonderful quote, it's still in there, "Dying art of disagreement. Our safe space is really a good answer." You can see that some of you are really thinking out of the box, and we appreciate that a lot. We would also appreciate you to pick these up if you can, for instance, and then just elaborate on that a bit more. Capitalism, you can see that it's got its drawbacks. You would like to see maybe a bit more work done on how capitalism can be done outside of this hard business shell, I would say. And of course, connected to this all, the dialogue with the young people, representation, and also you would like to see maybe even some, I would say, structural changes in terms of voting at the age of 16. You would like to see more powers coming down your way.
The labour market was a key issue. So you're talking about fair, better labour conditions, work-life balance, the amount of pressure that unemployment creates, entrepreneurship, all these topics we hear a lot of the time around the labour market. But there's a really interesting one. Someone popped up the idea of automation. What do we do when all of the robots take over and they're doing the jobs instead of us? So there's a real kind of slight difference to how you normally talk about labour market there, because it's very much about the future of it, and needs to recognise things like care work and volunteering as well.
Right. Connected to the politics and policy also, the issue of rights, human rights, equality. You can see that you would very much like to stress the freedoms, all the different freedoms we have and we should have, also with respect to all different, I would say, groups in the society, starting with men, women, transgender, Roma people, young people with disadvantages, very different groups. You would like to see these really tackled in, I would say, a transparent way. What's also been coming up a lot is the hate crime, prejudice, discrimination that you see as one of the key issues in here as well. So it's not really about the rights themselves, but also about keeping us in a decent society, I would say, with respect to media and all that relates to that.
There's some discussion about youth work and the youth sector. Unsurprisingly, you want more funding for youth work in the youth sector. That's not really going to shock anyone here. But very much talking about youth work at different levels and youth organisations at different levels, and some discussion of what new forms of youth work could look like. So smart youth work, new types of youth participation, and obviously some mention of key programmes within the youth sector we need to think about. So a youth-friendly and accessible Erasmus+, or how do we involve youth from Eastern Partnership countries as well.
And of course, there's been an issue of education. Now, when we said education, we really mean all forms of it, so formal, non-formal, informal. You have mentioned all of these, with a special focus on digital possibilities, subjects like citizenship education, media literacy, lifelong learning. You would really like to, even connected to the previous topic of rights, you would like to see the access to quality education to be granted. And you have even provided some, I would say, general guidelines as to what you would like to see change, just like salaries and education, and maybe even some standardization of education for comparison reasons. Generally, it's also connected to all of us coming together. So one of the issues was also, I would say, to recognize the education from one country in all the others as well.
There was a really interesting theme about, we've titled it Information Policy, and it was really about how information's used in society, how you deal with a world with lots of different messages coming from different angles, things like fake news and propaganda, how we think about rights of access to the internet and data safety and these sorts of things, and how we deal with online hate speech. And also how you think about the media itself and recognizing media biases, how young people learn about dealing with those, but also how we need to regulate those in society as well. So really something quite different there, I think, on this theme for me.
Right. You also didn't forget about mobility, of course, all of us being here from all the corners of Europe. You would like to see less bureaucracy and easier E+. You would like to see, again, equal access to the mobility programs. You would like to see more support generally to the mobilities. Obviously, you see a point in being mobile and doing these kinds of exchanges. And you would also like to discuss the European Solidarity Corps on one level or another.
And then I think this is the final one, there was a kind of topic that's really about the EU itself and what that means and how you think about the bigger structural policies in the EU, the bigger approach, the bigger things that are outside of the youth sector. And you could group a lot of what you were saying into three things under that. One was the idea of transparency, that the need for European politics to be open and understandable. For a good example of that given was free trade agreements. And then another area was common policy. It's essentially about more integration within the EU, stabilising the euro, how we combine things like defence, economics and finances. And then the final theme that people talk about in regards to the EU itself, and you'll notice this has been reflected in a few places, is the uncertainty. How do you feel comfortable with the future of the EU? How do you feel secure within it as an individual? So that was, different takes in different ways, really, I think.
Okay, it really seems like there are a lot of topics that actually matter to young people in this room. Was there anything that you didn't understand, that you left out? I mean, this really looks like a long list of topics, but is there anything else that you would like to comment on your work from yesterday?
Right, I mean, it's already been mentioned, there's been 203 Padlet inputs. Thank you very much for them. We've gone through each and every single one of them. We sometimes did not really understand what you meant by something. It was mostly the case of just, I don't know, saying mobility, for instance. I mean, mobility is nice, but it would need some context, I would say. Mm-hmm. So these kinds of messages were really hard to process, I would say, and some of them we left out. But from what you just saw, this is, out of these 203, we basically used like 190, I would say. So a very vast majority is in there. You can even see that there's overlaps. I mean, we really try to group things into clusters, which makes sense. But you can see that you have taken certain things from different angles. And of course, we need to keep that in mind when we work further.
Great.
I think it's interesting as well to point out what you're not talking about, to think about that for today. So there wasn't much in there about culture. There wasn't a huge amount about secondary education. And there wasn't a lot about participation as well. There was some references to formal political participation, but we were really surprised that didn't come up as a theme.
Okay, thank you very much for those recommendations. So also for us, it's very good to know how we should write things down, how we should communicate in order to make sure that the message that we want to send across, it's actually going to be sent across. So keep this in mind also for today, and also the topics that you haven't addressed yet. Because what we're going to do now, it's actually to see if all of the topics are the topics that we want to develop further. If there is something missing, what do we want to add? Do we want to discuss only about the very certain specific bullet points, or we want to talk about the big headlines that we saw? So this is in front of us for the next session and for the whole day, basically. So David, tell us, how is this going to work?
Yes, I will. So I'll just steal the pointer from you and invite you off stage, and then we're gonna kick off the frames for the Future Festival. Because as Thea said, we're gonna unfold the conversations that you find really important. Yesterday, you did all this mapping as step 1, and now Dan and Anders kindly made an overview of that, and they are the slides you have seen so far. They're also on the wall down here, so when we have the coffee break, you can go and have a look at them to see if there's something that really makes sense for you to unfold further. But basically, we want to spend the rest of the day for you to unfold the conversations that really have to happen today. You've all traveled far to get here to Estonia, and there's a certain momentum now, today, and an opportunity being the first conference in a new cycle of the structured dialogue process. And we have this open question of youth in Europe, what's next? And then we also have a responsibility to actually unfold, like, what is next when we talk about youth in Europe? And we want you to be the wise people in the room, figuring out what are these themes or conversations that really need to take place today. There are some suggestions there on the wall, and you are more than welcome to suggest one of these themes or sub-themes, but maybe you also have another important conversation that you really feel you would like to discuss with fellow delegates at this conference. And use the opportunity that you are here, young people representing other young people in Europe from various countries, and that you are ministry representatives here, and you actually have the opportunity to sit together and discuss certain topics. The way we're gonna work today is not like, now I show these 5 groups and then go to that space if you wanna work on that and that. Like, we haven't preset any groups. So we will have, for the next 20 minutes or so, we will have a process of starting up this Future Festival, then we have a coffee break, and then we come back, and we also start it off together. And it might be a bit long, thoughtful process. For some, it might be a bit chaotic. That's completely all right. I'm gonna guide you through it, and it's a part of the process that we make sure that we actually spend the afternoon on talking about the right things. So be patient on that side. And the idea of not having set these themes in advance is actually to activate you. We're working with the principles for what called open space technology. Some of you might know it and have worked with it before. And basically the idea is that a lot of people, when you attend conferences like this, you sit for a whole day and you listen to other people, or you attend a workshop that you were not really interested in, and then it doesn't really fall into the category that makes sense for you. And what is really important, or really makes sense of participating in these conferences, is what happened like at the coffee break or at night at the hotel lobby. And we want to take these good, meaningful conversations and actually bring them into the center of this conference. So saying, how can we actually, the exact topic or conversation that we need to unfold, let's unfold that together and use this opportunity now. I'm going to say a bit about the frames and the steps we're going to work in, and then we just we take it step by step and make sure to ask. We will be here as facilitators, and there are also volunteers that can help. So ask, so we make sure that you know what to do. Are you up for this? Yeah. Are you up for this? Like, does it make sense? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. We'll get to it. So, we have 6 steps. We take one at a time. I briefly want to walk through them now, and then we dig further into them. So the idea is now I set the frame for how we're going to work and the principles that we're going to work with as step 1. And then step number 2 is that each and everyone in this room has the opportunity to offer, to host a theme or a conversation. So it can be a theme headline, or it can be a question, or whatever. And a bit later, there will, like templates will be passed around to the tables, and you can actually write down the conversation that you would like to host and your host name. And then we put it on the wall, so we will have like one big marketplace. And then we will take some time where we can all walk around and have a look at what are the themes that have actually been proposed. And the host can say a few words about these themes. So just wait a bit for the volunteers with spreading them out. We will come to that I'll in a minute. So you can get an overview of where would you actually like to go. And then that's step 3, and then step 4 is that we take some time for you to think of where would make sense to go, and you get the opportunity to sign up on these themes. So we get a sense of, do we want to go there or go there? There might be a huge interest in one topic, which is completely fine, and other topics might not get that much attention for now. That means that there's not resonance with the rest of the conference delegates to address this topic now. It doesn't mean that it's not really, really important, but maybe another conversation needs to unfold now. But if you're just 3 people choosing that topic, it's also completely fine. Like, we don't have to be exactly 8 or exactly 10 or something. So the idea is that we find a place for the conversations that we need. When people have signed up, we make an overview of allocating spaces. So who goes to which working space around the venue. And then we send groups out so people know where they are. And we'll still have this overview wall. So throughout the day, there will be this overview of what conversations are taking place, the headline, the host, and the space. And then basically from that, around 12 o'clock, maybe a bit later, we get to step 6, and you go out and you do work in these self-organized groups that we have. You have picked a topic here, then you go out, and then you unfold the afternoon. We have a frame for that, a proposal on how you can do that, like a guide that will be provided for the hosts before you go out to your working space, and we'll also briefly go through it here. So we just like take one step at a time, but just to know that will be the flow of the day. So, setting up the frame, I'm going to say a bit about the principles that we work with in doing this. So first of all, this is a process of co-creation. We do a lot of collaboration. And collaboration often turns out in the form of co-production. Like, we know we have a goal and we're actually producing things to enter that goal. We have to wrap up things, we have to coordinate things so we get there. For this, we are co-creating. Meaning that you might have an idea of what needs to happen, and we need to do this, and this is the way, and just boom, boom, boom. But here we actually have the opportunity to meet across, to actually create something new, to let new things emerge or unfold. And maybe we get new insights or new ways of seeing this topic. All the content that you bring into this conversation comes from you and from what you bring, so the insights you have from the people you represent, your perspective, your experience. And the questions in these conversations also come from you, meaning that the responsibility of the quality of the conversation also lies on you. If you don't listen in, if you don't ask questions, if you don't engage, you'll probably waste the whole afternoon. But if you actually take this momentum and opportunity, then you can have really, really fruitful conversations. Okay? So that means be mindful of each other when you sit together. You might have different backgrounds, different experiences, and give a space to all voices to be heard in these conversations. Be curious towards each other and try not to just overrule each other, but actually see if you can you understand where people are coming from. And try to inquire deeply into these conversations and unfold them. And unfolding meaning that we don't just start off okay, education, but what is it about education? Education in this, inquiring deeper and see if we can really, can we crack that? We've called you shapers and shakers of the future. And you have a job of hacking or cracking this theme. and seeing like, how can we approach this? What is actually the problem here? And what is the problem behind the problem? This working process might be a bit frustrating for some, because like we don't know exactly where we're going, and the conversation can have different ways of unfolding. And for this, we want to invite you to see frustration as a source of creation. When we work with not just like closing down, decision making, but actually opening up and unfolding, we are working with emergence, things that emerge among you, ideas, conversations, perceptions. And for some that might be a really like shaky, like unknown place to be at. You're in the void. It's okay. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to go for a break or have a coffee, leave the conversation for a bit. But we also invite you to sit with that frustration and enjoy it. And maybe you'll get challenged and see your idea of this topic might actually unfold in other ways. You'll get something from the other people you are working with. The other main principle is that this work is self-organized, meaning we are not forcing you to go anywhere. So we also work with the law of the 2 feet. You have 2 feet, you can walk. If you find yourself in a place where you feel you are not really contributing to the conversation, it doesn't make sense for me to be here, then you can say that to the group and you can leave. You can go to think for yourself for a moment, or you can go to another group and ask, hey, can I join you? I'm actually also really interested in this topic. If you find yourself being too big of a group, or that the conversation is going in 2 different streams, then maybe suggest to split up the group and have smaller conversations and unfold that further. So go where you feel that you contribute the most to the conversations and spend the time wisely. Then we also want to encourage the principles of like whomever comes to these conversations are the right people. So maybe when you suggest to hold the topic, you have an idea of you want exactly these people to be there. But also be open to say, okay, the people we have here now, that's us. We have a responsibility to use this time in a good way. And how can we unfold that? Okay? So we are co-creating this. We're working with self-organization. And maybe we're also working with a bit of patience and just like seeing what happens and follow the flow. Because the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to give all of you the opportunity to offer themes and conversations. And we've made a sign-up sheet, or like a suggestion sheet, and some of them have put on the tables already. And if some tables haven't got this, please spread them out so all tables have some of these. The idea is that if you feel called to host a conversation, you simply take this and you write the theme of that conversation as a question or as a headline. Try to be, like, give it a bit of edge, not just writing education. What about education? Take your time, write down, and then when you have written it down, you can put it on the wall, the back wall. All of the back wall will be a marketplace. There's the sticky things to put it up with. And make sure to like spread them out so we can use the whole wall. You'll get the opportunity now to just sit and chat, host things, fill this out and put it up. And then at 11, we'll have a coffee break. You can go for coffee, have a chat of what actually makes sense. If you want to propose a session there, you can also do it and put it up while doing the coffee break. And when we come back, there's still a bit of time to think like, what actually evolved during the coffee break? Or the things that we really want to suggest, and then we can post these. And we're not in a hurry, so take your time, and it's not first come, first serve. So it's not like there's 10 spots for conversations, and so I really want to put up mine. So you can put a theme, put it up, and then after the break, there's still an opportunity to post themes. And then all the hosts get the opportunity to say a few words about the themes. Pirette said yesterday, you can't solve a problem that you're not willing to have. So this is not about just naming interesting themes. No, you should only fill this out if you're actually willing to host this conversation. And it doesn't mean that you are like, you have to be like the facilitator and steer the conversation. It just means that you will take the responsibility to see, I think this topic is important, I think we should unfold this, and I would like people to join me, and let's go to this room together and unfold that, and kind of making sure that happens. So I think it's an opportunity for everybody to be a host, so it shouldn't scare you away. But on the other hand, don't just put a theme if you're not willing to actually stick with it and say, I want to unfold this and make sure that we like gather at a place and set up a working space and unfold that. So during the break, you can also have a look at of the themes from yesterday, because we are building upon that mapping you made yesterday. So it can easily be that the theme you want to host is directly related to one of the sub-themes over here. It's fine. If it's not over there, or if it's a question about how do we structure dialogue or whatever, you can also put that on. So there's quite a freedom. For the step now, we're at step 2. It's just about posing a theme and writing the name of the host or hosts. You can be 2 people together if you want to. There are several other spaces of this. There's a sign-up space and also the working space. And as you see, they are further down in the steps. It's step 4 and 5. So don't fill them out now. And even though you're eager to go for this conversation, wait putting your name up. We start by just getting an overview of all these themes. And then there will be time where all of us together go, have a look, and you can put your name. Okay? Are there any questions for now, or what's going on? I will like explain the further steps when we get to them. But just any questions for now? There's a question down here. So can someone go with a mic? Are they up here?
Can you stand up? Yes, hi, Jørgen from Denmark. What if people have the same topics already written, and they find they have the same?
Thank you for asking that question. So if they put the same, it's all right. Still put it up. And then we see when you present them, because you will get the opportunity to say a few words about your theme, and maybe you have 2 various ways on unfolding that. And they can stay as like 2 themes unfolding almost the same, but we can see the interest of going in that direction, because maybe you have other perspectives in that theme you want to unfold. And then when we do the sign-up, if there's only 2 people on the one theme and 2 people on the other theme that's similar, I suggest that we put them together, and then actually they go together for that session. So let's see how that goes and how many of themes are overlapping. Okay? Okay. So we'll just take a few moments, sit and chat at your table. If you want to host a theme, you can write it already now. In just a few minutes, we'll have a coffee break. You can also write down things there, but there's also the opportunity when we come back. So we're not in a hurry. Take the time to talk and figure out, would you actually like to host a conversation during the coffee break? And then in a minute, we go for the coffee break. But just take a few moments and I'll send you off for that. And maybe one important thing to say about this frame, we just put it, if you could have had one important conversation to influence the future of young people in Europe, what would it be? Emphasizing that we're still talking about youth in Europe, what's next? So it's not just a conversation about everything. It should be connected to the theme of this conference, youth in Europe, what's next, and actually influencing the future of young people in Europe. So you can just continue the conversations into the coffee break, but here at 11 we do a coffee break for half an hour, and then we all meet in here at 11:30. So enjoy.